I'd like to call to order the Appointments and Ordinance Committee meeting via WebEx on Tuesday, July 27th at 5:31 p.m. Counselor Gwen is here. Counselor Jarvis. Counselor Dolan.
I am here.
Counselor Elmer.
Here.
Counselor Gilmore.
Hi, I'm sorry about that. I just got back from work.
We didn't start without you. Thank you. The committee is all here, and can I have someone make a motion to accept the minutes of June 14th?
So moved, Jarvis. Second.
Second, Elmer. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? No corrections? All right then. So as I said a few minutes ago, I'm going to read a statement in just a second before we open the public hearing. But if you're planning on speaking with us this evening, please in the chat box, put your name and your address. I will take them in order.
Where's the chat box, please?
If you, in the bottom lower right-hand corner of the screen, there's the word chat. If you click on the word chat, then it'll bring up a chat box where it says type your message. Counselor Dolan, did you have something for me?
Yeah, if I could, I just wanted to clarify. So my understanding is that we have the recommendations, the final report from the Charter Review Committee, but we don't have the actual language of amendments.
Correct.
And so I wanted to ask, so what is the process for moving potential amendments forward, and kind of whose responsibility is that? Does that lie with us, or does that lie with the original commission?
It's a good question, and maybe it's a good point of clarification. We can do this. This is the start of the next process, which is the public hearing. Counselor Forgy, as a member of the Charter Review Committee, and I and Clerk Scott talked to the lawyer for the town and made sure that we understand the process of each piece of this. So there's multiple parallel processes going forward. This is more of a marathon than it is a sprint. So some things will be brought forward as motions. Some will be brought back as ordinances, and those will come through the council, this committee. Some could go directly to council floor. Some will be reviewed by this committee. But the entire process, there will not be a single document at any point in time until all of it has come through, including anything that needs any kind of process to go along with the Commonwealth. If we need to put something on a ballot referendum, if we have to, all of that will be done within the time frame, and those pieces will be brought forward. Councilors can bring pieces forward, and I do have, following this meeting, Counselor Forgy from the committee has said that she will kind of collate things coming out of their committee, and then we can talk about the specifics, which we can do at our committee meeting. Does that help? But there was some, Councilor Dolan, there was some miscommunication. Even if you heard the news story that was on my stations today, it said we'll be voting on these at the August meeting or something like that. That is not true. There could be a piece of this that makes the August agenda, you know, a maintenance piece or a motion or an ordinance that comes through, but we will not be taking this on in August. This is the start of the next piece. So if that helps. All right, I'm going to move forward with this. I would like to read this. So I want to go over tonight's procedure of the public hearing. Tonight, the A&O Committee will listen to public comment on the Charter Review Committee final report, which provided for public input during their process and contained members of the public in the Charter Review Committee. It's not a question and answer meeting, but listening to the public comment. You must sign up in the chat box to be recognized, and no conversations or comments in the chat box because it violates open meeting. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to comment, and one cannot yield their time to another person. Please state your name and address when I ask you to speak. We will recognize Greenfield residents before any other. I ask you to please turn off your video and mute your mic if you're not speaking, except for the committee. Please mute yourselves, but leave the cameras on. This helps to save bandwidth and lets people be heard, and we're not stepping on each other. The committee will treat everyone tonight with respect, and I ask anyone that's commenting do the same. I have scheduled the committee meeting in case discussion is needed following the public hearing. The A&O committee will act as a liaison as recommendations are brought forward to comply with Commonwealth law in the charter change procedure. Different areas of the charter follow different procedures, and the changes will be voted on at council at different times and following the criteria by section. It will not happen all at once, but rather a process within a timeline to comply before the changes are submitted to the Commonwealth as one document. So the Commonwealth does not want to get charter changes piecemeal. Although we take it piece by piece, they will all be collated by the council office. And when we were finally done with the processes, we'll then submit the charter changes as they're put forward, if that makes sense to everyone. So I would like to open the public hearing for the Greenfield's city charter potential amendments to the review of the Charter Review Committee. They are Articles 1 through 7 as they appear on tonight's agenda, which is the report that we accepted by this committee last month. We accepted their report. We didn't vote on anything. We accepted their report. I will open the public hearing, and I ask that we follow what I outlined, which is as I ask you to speak, state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes. Counselors on my committee, if you have questions, please save them to our discussion period after the public hearing. And if there's any other counselors that are participating tonight, and I'm glad you're taking part in this, please don't comment, because sometimes we have too many counselors making comments and it stops the process. All right, it looks like Kristen Shippey. Kristen, are you there? So you want to open your microphone if you're there? Kristen? Can anyone hear her? Okay, I'm going to move on and we will come back as soon as we can. And if I skip anyone, Councilor Dolan, if you see me jump over anyone, please, if you can just chime in and tell me I screwed up, it'd be great. All right. Wilson Roberts.
Thank you. Can you hear me all right?
Perfect. So your name and your address, please.
Wilson Roberts, 15 Chestnut Hill, Greenfield. And one of the questions before you as a result of the Charter Committee's report is how many signatures of registered voters should be required to overrule an action by the City Council. And overruling an action to the City Council should not be burdensome, but it should not be so easy that a small group of dissenters can become obstructive. I mean, we really need dissent. Dissent can be instrumental in furthering justice and growth, but can also be destructive and it can be petty. The question for Greenfield voters and for you to consider, and ultimately Greenfield voters to consider, I would hope, would be what is the appropriate number of signatures on a petition that would allow for reasoned decisions to prevail over obstruction and pettiness. The city charter requires signatures from 2.5% of registered voters to initiate a citizen petition. This, we all know, I think, is too low. The committee proposes 10%, and I think that's too high. I urge the council to put before the voters a proposal of 7% to initiate a citizen referendum. The importance of the referendum has increased, I think, as the size of the council has decreased. The importance is evident in the discussions going on right now. Greenfield's population has been pretty steady since the 1920 census. It's been between 15,000 and 18,000. The council consists of 13 people, which is about 0.072% of the population. And they're empowered to make decisions for nearly 18,000 people. It's realistic to assume that 13 people can make an error in judgment, one that is significant, and I stress significant, number of their constituents consider a grave mistake. The purpose of a citizen referendum is to correct such a mistake. Requiring the signatures of 7% of registered voters would not be an obstacle to initiating the referendum if the issue is one of substantial interest. It would help free the referendum process of squabbles and peaks and yet keep it accessible to a reasonable number of reasonable citizens. So again, I would really urge this committee to consider, the council to consider, and the community to consider that 7% is a reasonable number of signatures from a reasonable number of people. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilor Jarvis, you have that timer, correct? Kristen Shippey? Kristen, are you on? Moving on. Ed Berlin?
Dan
Yes.
is the mayor. Sorry to interrupt. She did put in the chat that she has been trying to talk, but there does seem to be a technical difficulty.
Let me try and see if I can bring up her microphone. Hold on. I'll see if she's muted. I can't find her. So if she can get on, please let me know. I'm going to move on and I will come back.
Dan,
Yes. Yep.
once again, she is under Leovo.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for taking care of me here. All right, let me see if I can. Yeah, her microphone is not muted. In fact, she is on. So I can't help. Please, if she can finally talk, just say hello to me and we'll get her on. Let's move on. Ed Berlin.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I want to speak about Section 7.8, the citizen.
Ed, just your name and your address for the record.
Ed Berlin, 20 Orchard Street in Greenfield. I'd like to speak about Section 7.8, the citizens referendum procedures. This is an issue that's clearly worth the rigorous debate that we are in the middle of, but I'd just like to make one thing clear. This is not a First Amendment issue. There is no one who's being denied the right to speak. The issue is, and as I agree with Will Roberts, is what it will take to overturn the vote of the council. This is a right provided by our city charter, not by the U.S. Constitution. My comments, I draw upon my experience with Library Yes. We spent 2 years lobbying the council. We submitted over 1,400 signatures. We got a supermajority vote of the council, yet we were overturned by a little over 300 signatures. We had to go to the ballot, and we ended up with 61% of the vote, and also had a delay of our project for about 9 months. So the question is, Will Roberts says, what is the right number? And I submit that it has to be high enough to demonstrate that there is a groundswell of support in favor of overturning the council's vote, not a well-organized minority. The argument about not having enough time to get signatures is not persuasive. If there is that groundswell of support, there would have been plenty of time to develop a database of supporters before the council even voted, just as we did with Library Yes. There are about 13,000 registered voters. Each percent equals about 130 voters. I happen to agree with Will. 7% is a good balance. It would require these days about 910 signatures. That seems to be the right balance. I would also ask you to consider one more thing. With regard to overturning the vote of a supermajority of the council, you might want to consider a higher threshold than overturning a mere majority of the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Appreciate your time. Kristen, are you there? Pamela Goodwin. Pamela, are you on?
Yeah, I've unmuted. I was hoping to. Oh, there I am.
Yep.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you for taking my comment. I'm.
If you could just state your name and address for the record.
Sorry, Pamela Goodwin, 54 High Street.
Thank you.
I'm looking for a better democracy and not making it harder for what I feel would be more of a Republic or a Democratic situation. I'm not great with all the numbers, but I do not want the requested recommendation to go forward. I was unable to email all the council people this afternoon, but I mean, I remember when it was a town, and I'm very confused about who was on the charter review. I heard it was like maybe 7 people and only 3 counselors out of the 13. That seems like a really small number of people who are sitting down every 10 years to take a look at the Greenfield Charter. There seemed to be some confusion about whether it was going to be just editing, whether you needed to pull out illegal things because things do change. I personally would like to see a vision for Greenfield that would go forward. And I am working with some people in the Worcester area, and they're going to review their charter, change their charter. People in Worcester are very unhappy with that particular charter. I know some towns don't even have a charter, and I used to live in one of those. So I don't know who was on the committee, but if it were 7 out of the entire population of Greenfield, or even as just registered voters, it seems pretty small as far as getting some input. I know a committee needs to be workable, a good working group, but I have no idea how often they met. I tuned in once or twice. I know it's a lot of hard work, and I'm not disparaging that. I think people worked hard to review the committee, but I'm very disappointed with what this current recommendation is. I don't understand it. And if somebody wants to email me, I could put my email in the chat, but I think some people know how to get a hold of me. I wish I knew the process better, and I'm just really unhappy at the number of signatures that are required. I get signatures for council people. I go door to door knocking. It is hard work. Many people are not even registered. If they're registered, they don't want to get involved, and they want to vote for the President of the United States. So I'll pass. Thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you. Sandy Thomas.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for the public comment period on the issue of raising the threshold of signatures needed for a public referendum. I have a deep concern about a suggested increase in the number of voters that be required. The rationale for why we suddenly need to raise the number of signatures to 1,272 is not understandable. It's 4 times what it's required. And as Pamela just discussed, it is difficult to get signatures. It's not an easy thing. The underlying question is, why would we make it harder for people to participate in our government? I don't understand it. The city council should not make up rules for how to challenge the city council vote. Do I hear somebody else talking? Sorry.
Yes, someone might not be muted. Sandy, okay. I apologize. Let me see if I can
Thank you.
Find them.
Good. If the change is decided that it is needed, I could support up to 5% of the total signatures of voters, which would be 636 signatures per referendum using section 7.10 of the charter to put the proposed charter on the ballot so all voters get to vote on it. I'm asking that this decision, which is a major change in policy, be put to the voters on the November ballot for the entire community to decide, along with the signature requirement, percentage, and the number of days allowed to gather. This should be a full 30 to 45 days rather than 20, as it turns out that it has been. It benefits us when we all keep a more democratic process in place that offers an attainable, reasonable check and balance system for issues and projects that potentially impact all Greenfield residents. Thank you for your time and for taking comments.
Thanks, Andy. Nice to see you.
Yep, good to see you.
Ed Berlin has already gone. Kristen, were you able to speak yet, Kristen? Okay. I don't see any other names on my list. Does Councilor Dolan, have you seen anyone add anything on that I missed? If there's anyone else that wanted to speak this evening, could you first of all type your name in that message box? If for some reason you have not, go ahead and do that.
I typed my name in, but you don't see it for some reason.
Huh. All right. I'm not sure why it's not showing up. If anyone else sees any of those, I see you're on the camera, so I see where you are. Albert Norman.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman Gwynn. For the record, it's Al Norman, Grinnell Street in Greenfield. Tonight's discussion about citizen initiatives and referendum is not just about numbers. It's about the right of citizens in a democracy to bring a vote of the elected officials to all the voters to determine what the majority wants. Referendums are not decided by minorities. They have to be passed by majority vote. The referendum is the one key tool that the voter has to find out what the majority of people in a community want. That's why a, quote, too hard referendum is the antithesis of democracy. Let's take a look at some of the key referendum numbers over the past decade. In 2010, when the voters placed 3 referendum questions on the ballot against the biomass energy plant, they had to gather a minimum of 582 signatures, which was based on 5% of the total registered voters. The voters went on to vote against the biomass by an average of 84% of those who came to the polls. In 2019, when the voters sought to put the issue of a new library on the ballot, they had to gather a minimum of 319 voter signatures, which was 10% of the voters voting in the last biennial election. In that election, by the way, 54% of the voters did not even go to the polls. As a result, 27% of the total registered voters voted for the library. In 2021, the Charter Review Committee has recommended requiring 1,272 signatures, 10% of the total registered voters. That's 4 times the signatures required in 2019, twice as many signatures required in the biomass of 2010. The Charter Commission is asking for a significantly higher level of signatures than in the entire 19-year history of this city charter. I testified before the committee in support of 5% of total voters, 636 signatures, which is still the highest number of signatures Greenfield has ever required. 5% of total voters was in effect from 2002 to 2018, 16 out of the 19 years of our charter, and no harm came to Greenfield. No onslaught of frivolous referendum requests took place. I urge you to oppose no higher hill to climb for majority rule than 636 signatures. And one note about citizens' initiatives. The citizen initiative process, 7-7, should not be any harder or more time-consuming than the citizen referendum. For the sake of simplicity of process, I urge you to recommend to the council that initiative process be identical to the referendum process in signatures and time to gather names. The supplemental process of a quote supplemental process of a second round of signatures for the time extends the time frame for as much as 90 days. The initiative and referendum process should be the same. And I wanted to just indicate that I believe that I'll leave it. I just wanted to say that this referendum process, I've been through it since 1993. I urge you to take this to the voters in November. This is not something that should be decided by 9 people or 13 people. The council should enable the voters to have their voices heard. And I thank you all for the work that's been done on this so far. I think we're close to where we need to be, and I hope that we can reach a resolution in a calm and reasonable way. Thanks.
Gary Selden. Gary.
Hello, friends. For Trevor Court. I'm not in favor of advancing the number of votes.
I'm sorry, Gary. Could you just state your name and address for the record?
Gary.
I think we're breaking up. Are we having trouble?
Can you hear me?
Very softly, but yes.
Very softly. That's strange. Can you see me?
They're nodding. Yes. Now I see you, Gary. So
is this loud enough for me to tell you that I live at 4 Trevor Court?
Yes, perfect.
Oh my God, I'm going to yell the whole time.
Much better, thank you.
Hello, friends. Oh, it is odd to yell. I'm going to close the window so my neighbors don't suffer. I'm not in favor of moving the number of signatures needed to advance the 7-7 or 7-8 procedures forward beyond the point that we originally agreed to at the start of the city charter. The purpose of this function is checks and balances is a common phrase. It's a balance on the power. I would echo what Sandy Thomas said. I don't want to make that any harder than what we originally agreed to. I have what I believe is a common frailty amongst humans in terms of thinking that I'm right. Often. I so respect the folks who commit to the school committee, to serving on the school committee and the council, even when I disagree with their votes. I don't want to disrespect them in any way, but no group of that size can always be right. The purpose of the check is to send the issue to all of the voters who choose to vote. That should not be hard. It should not be balanced against a groundswell of support. It should just be easy. All involved in the process, ideally, would be fully informed of that. Every vote taken by either of those bodies, I hope the folks that have committed their energies to get to what seems like a final point of taking the vote, I hope that they're aware that we have the right as the citizens of the town, the granting authority. The citizens of Greenfield is where the authority comes to elect the representatives to do that work. So that's a thumbnail of what I think and why. Did I talk loud enough?
You did. Oh you did, Gary. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Good night.
Have a good evening. Stephanie Duclos.
Good evening. I'm calling. I couldn't have said it any better than Al or Gary or Sandy. The process of getting all the signatures when we were petitioning the town is very difficult. And especially now during the COVID, I imagine it will be more difficult to be able to be face-to-face getting the signatures that are required. It really impedes sometimes the voter's voice when we disagree with a majority of the votes. And to make our voice less because the numbers are higher doesn't seem right. I think it really does need to go to the voters, especially this one. If you want to have your voice squashed, then let everybody decide that that's the way it wants to go. Thank you.
Stephanie, can you just state your name and address for the record, please?
Stephanie Duclos, Chapman Street, Greenfield.
Thank you. Okay. Is there anyone else that I missed in the chat box. Kristen, we never got to talk to you. I apologize. I'm not sure what the technical issue on that between us talking is. Is there anyone else that I missed in the box? What I'm going to ask now is if there's anyone on screen that for whatever reason I missed you in the chat box, if you open your microphone and talk to me at this moment and tell me your name and address, I'd like to hear from you if I've overstepped anyone.
Hello, Dan, can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, wonderful. This is my first experience doing this, so bear with me, please.
And who am I
You all
speaking
look
with?
great on camera.
Who am I speaking with?
You're speaking to Sandy Kosterman. I think it shows up as Chaz, which is the name of my computer.
So if you just, Sandy, if you just state your name and address for the record and then tell us what you'd like.
Sure. Sandy Kosterman, Barton Road, Greenfield. And I emailed this to all of you, but it was later this afternoon, so I'm not sure you received it. And I'll just read it to you. Dear City Councilors, in regard to increasing the number of signatures, the citizens of Greenfield would need to gather to take a vote to the City Council to the ballot is huge. We think the number should be left as it is now or let the voters decide in November. Also, we think if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I had a few other paragraphs in that letter, but it doesn't pertain to this issue. So if you'll be so kind as to read it when you have a chance. And it's from my husband and I, Charlie Kosterman, same address. And so let me know what your thoughts on this, okay? I'd appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming out tonight.
How do I get out of here now?
You just hit mute and you can just watch and smile at us, and we can't see you anymore. So it works out all right.
You could see me for a while?
We could, but I fixed that. All right.
Good. Okay. Thanks so much, Dan.
No problem. Is there anyone else that was wishing to speak that is being missed in the chat box, or you're questioning how to do it? If you could talk to us now, just state your name for me and we'll try to recognize you. I am seeing none. First of all, let me just say on behalf of this committee, I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to make comments for us tonight. This, as I stated in the beginning, is more of a marathon than it is a sprint. Each of these pieces will be looked at and move forward. We will be discussing it over several meetings, and there'll be votes depending on which pieces move forward, probably all the way up to the end of this calendar year. So I appreciate everybody. We have about 6 months to move this forward after we received it. So that's what we're looking at. So we've got a few months, and then some pieces of this will start to fall into place. Thank you. Anyone else before I close the public hearing? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing at 6:04 p.m. And once again, thank you all. Also, if I omitted this in the beginning, I'd like to thank the Charter Review Committee for their dedication and their work. I know the chair of the Charter Review Committee, David Singer, was on the call tonight, and he is doing that. So if there was any public comment that needed explanation to my committee, he would do that. So even now, you have people that sat through these meetings and the process, and they're still willing to help us bring this through. So I appreciate all of their effort, everyone that served on that committee. And thank you. We're going to move into the rest of the business of A&O, which is not a lot. There are no motions this evening. If my committee wants to turn on your microphones. So I asked for this to be put in the form of a meeting in case there was any real questions from the committee at the end of the meeting or something happened during the meeting. So I think when Councilor Dolan made a good point earlier before I started, there will be several processes which I will bring forward on how we're going to do this. Some of these charter recommendations will move forward with ordinances. those ordinances can be brought forward by any counselor. So we're doing Counselor Forgy is looking at drafting for us some of the maintenance pieces and the ordinance changes that will be voted on. Nothing moves forward without a council vote. When we were talking about section 7.7 and 7.8, those will be by referendum ballot question. Those will go to the public. We will draft the question, and the council will draft the question, and the council will forward it to our attorney to make sure the language is correct for the ballot, and then it'll move forward. Before that's done, we'll have input on numbers and percentage and all of those things that were brought up by the public this evening. Some of you asked early on why we weren't moving the charter recommendations forward, because there was a lot of misconception out there early on that we voted on it and it was being voted on next week and next month. And the truth is, until we have this public hearing, I wasn't comfortable moving anything forward. The process said that the public gets to speak, and we want to make sure that as we start to move things forward, we consider what the public had. They saw the final draft the same time we did. So now that they've had a chance to look at it and speak, now we can start to bring things forward and follow the procedures. Different pieces of this have different ways that they need to be done to be legal. And I will update this committee on that as we start to move forward and take it piece by piece to get the process done. Is there anyone else? Is there anyone that has any specific questions or anything tonight that we can answer?
I think Sheila had her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sheila, I can't see you. I apologize. Councilor Gilmore, Vice President Gilmore.
Yes, I did have my hand up, but I think that we're probably early in the discussions to start talking about the question that I had. So I'll bring it up later. I was thinking more about the form of the question, but I'm putting the cart before the horse.
I appreciate that. And please, everyone has ample opportunity to bring that. And I think the discussion tonight about percentages and numbers is a good discussion. I think we want to be clear, and I think we want to take the recommendation, but we want to look at it. I had a conversation with Chair Singer from that committee earlier about that subject when I asked him to speak, and I think he'll be talking to us. David, are you on tonight? Are you there? I don't know if he left us, and that's fine. I told him he wouldn't be speaking tonight, so oh, there he is.
Yes.
Hello, David. I hope you don't mind that I recognized you. And as we move this forward in the process, I will probably ask you to work with the council and Councilor Forgy on moving some of these things forward from recommendations to actual working pieces. And I know you and I talked about that, and I know you've been in the public and you haven't stopped yet.
Thank you. I would want to say one thing, Mr. Chair. I wish Pam Goodwin was still on. You all could find the charter report and a summary of the report. The public can find it online. If you look at committees, you'll see Charter Review Committee, and if you turn on that site at the bottom, you will see the report, the summary, you'll see the exhibits for the report, and you'll see all the correspondence. There must be 40 emails from people in the community. So it wasn't just public hearings, it was input for a long period of time. So
David, seeing you open that door, I'm going to stick my foot in it. The Charter Review Committee is a charter process, correct? And the makeup of that committee?
Process is defined by the charter.
And the makeup of the committee?
Makeup of the committee is 3 counselors chosen by the president and 4 citizens of the community chosen by the mayor.
And that procedure was followed.
Correct.
Correct. And obviously,
point of personal privilege.
Sure.
So Pamela Goodwin is in my precinct. She's my neighbor, and I have her phone number. I was on the charter committee. I'm on ANO, and obviously I'm on the city council. So I get 3 bites at this apple. I'm happy to call her tonight and explain it to her. She did send me an email today, but I was at work and I wasn't able to respond to her. And then I left a little early the rain delayed me. I apologize again for
Oh,
being
no,
late.
no. You're like 2 minutes late, Sheila.
I'm happy. Well, I'm happy to give her a call after this meeting and explain it to her.
Sheila, I wrote in my notes that I wanted to do exactly what Councilor Singer said, that we would forward her a copy of the charter review, the same notes. We can make a copy of that for her and make sure that she gets it. Just for anyone that's still on with us, the review committee did a great job in that process, and the notes in the margins, it also highlighted things, just to educate, as David did to me, was there are things there that came in that they discussed that didn't move forward, and you know that, you were on the committee, but at least people can see the process. I would say that this had to be one of the most transparent processes that I've been involved in, and I want to keep it that way. So if anyone has any confusion, that would be great, Sheila, if we could get that information to her and get her a copy of that, because I knew when she was asking questions that we all had the answers. It wasn't the process. So I thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Anyone else with any questions?
I have one.
I'm sorry, Councilor Dolan and then Councilor Elmer.
So I would also like to thank the folks who were on the Charter Review Commission. I know that was a huge amount of work, and you came back with a bunch of valuable stuff that's not really controversial, and then a few things that might end up being, which is part of the process. I did have a question for those folks on what seems to be our most controversial issue. I was curious if anybody did the research to figure out where Greenfield's citizen referendum and initiative procedures stack up in terms of like, where are we on the bell curve statewide?
I think
my instinct would be try to be pretty close to the middle.
I will let either Councilor Forgy or Chair Singer answer that question if they feel so forth. I believe in the process that when we did that, we were low on our numbers. We weren't in the middle. We weren't high. We were low. And Councilor Forgy, are you there? If not, Chair Singer, are we accurate on that information?
I'm still here, but I'll defer to Dave if he wants to take the question. But my recollection of it is that we have the lowest margin. At one time, before we changed to this charter and a mayoral form of government, I do believe that we followed the state guidelines. I'd like to say that for referendum petition, I'd like to say that that was 20% way back when, but I don't know that as a fact.
And then, and thank you, Councilor Forgy. And then, David, I also, maybe this would be a good point for you to go over the fact that our number was higher, and then in another charter change, we lowered it. Could you just give us that information? Are we on track here?
Why we lowered it?
No, just that happened. Because if you heard the comments from the public today, a lot said, why are we raising it? It should be as it was written. If it was as it was written, it would be what we're asking for. Am I correct? That what you're asking for. The number is almost being restored to what it was originally that was voted on by the voters, and then it was changed. Can you just share some light on that piece?
Sure. There have been two examples that we could glean information from. One is the biomass and the other is the library. Those are the two times that the referendum petition was used. But before I want to go back to your question about Councilor Dolan's question.
Yes.
In fairness to the group that spoke tonight, what we did objectively was we looked at ourselves. What our group did was looked at Greenfield as a city, no longer the city that calls itself a town. I'm not saying we did it in a sarcastic way, a satirical way. We decided that it was time after this long a period of time. So we looked at other cities in Western Mass, and we compared ourselves to those cities, and we were lower. For example, Northampton, a city that's we like to think we're same as, although their population is higher, requires 15% of their registered voters, and they only get 20 days to file a petition. So clearly, they've taken the position as a city that it's most difficult to do a citizen petition or a referendum petition. Greenfield, on the other hand, and I think this is where you all have to come into play. I think there are people in Greenfield who still would like to see part of the town meeting process or the idea that the citizens have the final word. And I don't think that anything's wrong with that. However, let's just note this, that those that want 5% have compared us to Amherst, for example, which is a similar size community. They are a town form of government. They only require 5%, but you have to, the petition timeline is 14 days. So think about it, 14 days, probably same voter registration. So if you want to take the full spectrum, if you want to use the information from those that want 5%, they are lower numbers, but the timelines are a lot shorter, and their form of government is different. Many of them are towns, have town meeting, people then leave town meeting and are able to protest. So we were trying to do apples to apples this time, which was, what do other cities like ourselves do? I'm not saying that that's the right way or the wrong way, neither is our committee. It was just, that was the analysis we made, that if we're going to be a city, this is who we should compare ourselves to.
And where did our comparison come in, David, to that piece?
10% is the lowest. State law is 12%, 20 days. Many of the other communities were 10, 12%. So
okay,
10% is relatively low for a city, or kind of a median, as Councilor Dolan was asking.
Yes,
but
that's
again,
what I wanted.
I say this so that we all can be open-minded about what we're hearing from the members of our community.
And David, one more piece on that.
It doesn't mean that we have to follow that necessarily if our personality wants to be different. And that's really up to all of us to decide.
David, we already changed this percentage once since the original charter. Yes?
I can explain that. So it was 5%. We went to the first charter review, which I was sitting on, and some people felt that 5% was too high. So we changed it from 5% of registered voters to 10% of those who vote in the last election, which I don't think is a good measuring stick, by the way. I think that should be done. That one should be done away with. And the lowest number would be 2.5% of all registered voters in the event that like 3 people showed up for the last election. And I think there was a low turnout the election before the library, and so that's why it was 300 people, because they reached the bottom 2.5% of registered voters. As a result of what happened with the library, as a result of the library being steered off track and the result of the fire station being delayed, I think the committee felt that maybe it's time to go higher than 5%. Maybe it's time to look at, we're a city, everybody worked really, really hard on those votes before the city council. And it should take a groundswell of support, was our opinion, to get something on the ballot. Again, that was how we looked at it based on the demonstrative evidence that came before us. And again, it's up to all of us to decide, but that's how the committee viewed it.
Thank you, David. Councilor Elmer? You muted.
I have 2 questions. One, there's some confusion about how much time people have to collect signatures in that 30-day period, and what's unclear is how long it takes for the lawyer to review it and how long it takes for the clerk to get it out. Could we get David, I guess, your best estimate now about what those times are? And my second question is, which I had other opportunities to ask, but now it occurs to me, was there any consideration of reducing the number of years that counselors serve? 4 is starting to feel like a long time.
What was your first question? Oh, your first question was I totally support the idea, and it's written into the appendix, section 7.8 and 7.7, by the way, that the lawyer be given a short period of time And after that period of time, the amount of days necessary to file the petition be extended by every day that the lawyer's late and by every day that the clerk's late. So we were thinking 5 days for the lawyer, 2 days for the clerk. You might think 3 days for the lawyer, 1 day for the clerk, since when the petition is filed, the clerk knows something's up, so the clerk's office can start gearing up to prepare a petition. You just want you want a lawyer to eyeball it, and you want, but those numbers can be as short as it's discretionary with you to finally decide. But I think the 30 days should be held firm because the referendum blocks a measure that's been put into effect, and therefore, with speed, that should get to the ballot if that's where it's going to head. No delay.
Thank you, David.
I'm sorry, there was a second question by.
He was wondering if the terms held by counselors were suggested to be lowered, but I'm not sure if he was serious or just being a little quirk with us tonight.
I'm serious.
All right.
They could either be, they have to be, they used to be 3, which I think was a good number, but when becoming a city, we were forced to change to every off year. So we used to have an election every year. So we divided the council into 3 parts. Now we can only have an election every other year. So we thought 4 years was certainly sufficient. You can change that. 2 years means that counselors don't get a lot of experience by the time they're into it. That's what we thought. And also they're running for election like representatives as soon as they get into office. Those are the 2 reasons we went to 4 years. There's other reasons to make it shorter. So there's nothing wrong with making it 2 years.
Thanks, David. Councilor Gilmore.
Yes. I don't want to poo-poo any of the research that people have put into this because I know that there has been a great deal of time. But I think the one thing that we're missing when we're talking about numbers and comparing ourselves to our neighbors is we're sort of like losing the zeitgeist in Greenfield right now. And I know I spent a lot of time on the phone and a lot of time responding to emails from people who feel like we're not responding to them. And that's on all 13 of us, you know, and I know I believe in my heart of hearts that I am responsive to my constituents. I'm sure that everybody else on the council also believes the same, and I'm not trying to make accusations in that regard. But we also have a responsibility to make sure that, you know, that perception is being backed up by actions. So we can talk about numbers all day long, but what we really need to think about is, do our neighbors have a lot of faith in this process right now? And I think with some of the accusations that have been flying around and some of those nasty feelings that people are expressing, it feels difficult to defend a change like this. And like I said, I was on the, charter committee. So this is something that, David, Chris, and Otis and I, we were all talking about this along with our I want to say civilian colleagues, I'm sorry, our non-counselor colleagues. And we did put a lot of thought into it, but I think that Greenfield feels very different for me this week than it felt for me 1 year ago. And we really need to take that into account too.
All right.
I know that's hard to quantify, but I'm a social science geek.
No, Sheila, I think I was going to ask you the question you just answered. I was going to say, what was your opinion when you were on the committee? Because it was, in your face, and but you explained that, and that was my only piece. Was you had this recommendation in some ways came from you collectively. So I was just, in that process, that number came from somewhere. Were at the time, and at the time, were you comfortable with those numbers when that was being put together, or where were you?
I would say that at the time, most of what we talked about, and David, please feel free to weigh in because you may have a different perception than I had. I feel like most of the issues that we talked about felt like housekeeping issues. There were some things that needed to be updated. There were some areas where we just needed to tighten up the language because it was unclear what would happen in X hypothetical situation or Y hypothetical situation. And I don't feel like there was a lot of contention around those issues. I feel like this is one where people disagreed more. Also, when we were talking about ranked choice voting, which didn't actually make it all the way to this level, but it was something that a lot of our constituents brought up. And, you know, now that it's with the council, no offense, David, but now that it's with the council, I would like to bring that back up because so many people wrote to us about it. So this has always been a difficult one.
No, I appreciate
and
that.
I'll leave it there. Someone else wants to jump in.
No, that's, any of the other counselors that haven't spoken have anything they want to, you know, tonight was just this, it was a simple discussion as we move forward. This was not any nuts and bolts, you know, nitty gritty. This was just making sure that we all felt that we had a starting place. And that's what I wanted to do. Anyone else that we're there? Counselor Forgy, I recognized you once this evening. So if there was anything you wanted to add, as another member on the Charter Review Committee. If not, is there anything we're missing? Oh, there you are.
Yep, I'm here, Councillor Quinn. To follow up on what Sheila said about the whole process, we actually, as a committee, did debate what the role of the Charter Committee was. Were we supposed to clean up what didn't fit or didn't work anymore? Are we supposed to vision, you know, for what we expect in 10 years is going to happen in the government? That's a little difficult to do, but I think it's always important to look ahead. And while there weren't any contentious pieces, because I think the committee worked extremely well together and we had very good leadership, there were things that needed some significant review and input. And those were identified in the report. So things like the assessor's office, for instance, very important piece, public safety and a citizen review board. Public health that we did talk about, maybe we need to have bigger conversations. I'm not sure, but that's up to the council. But the thing I think the council has to take into consideration that it's okay when we are going through all of this for us to envision as well as accept. So I think it'll be a lively time on council floor at some meetings, but there's great potential here, and there's great hope for the future.
All right.
So I'm thankful thank you for letting me talk. Thank you.
And thank you for all your work, you know, from all of you. I guess the other thing I just want to mention before we bring this to close, and I did skim on this a few moments ago, is we have a timeline that we have to work under.
Yes.
Questions 7.7 and 7.8, if they're going to make it to the ballot, that has to be addressed sooner than later. Because there's a time period where we have to get the question approved by legal and get on the ballot. So some of this stuff will be put forward sooner than later. And you'll start seeing that by next meeting. And then some of the maintenance stuff that, and I don't mean to sound that, some of the routine maintenance and the cleanup in the language, we'll be bringing that forward because I believe Councillor Forgy has taken a look at some of that already. And because that didn't really involve a lot of input, it's just stuff that needs to be voted on to clean it up. So I think some of that will come sooner than later. But I thank you all for that. Anyone else? Anything else I'm missing? Seeing none. Let me just check and see where we are.
Chairman. I just
yes.
want to, just one thing. This whole meeting has been about Section 7. I'm surprised that there are no folks on about ranked choice voting. We got a lot of emails about ranked choice voting. And just so the public understands, I mean, you're going to get a legal opinion, but I think you're going to have a commission to talk about it. So it's going to take a while to do, and you're going to have to elect commissioners. So I don't know where that's at. I'm not promoting it. I'm just saying that it has a time. It'll be more time consuming than what you're talking about with the referendum vote. So putting that out, that I'm surprised you didn't hear from anybody.
Yeah, that process is good. If that process was going to move forward, that takes almost its own entity to move that forward and would actually move out of the window of availability. Not that it can't happen, but it's going to take a longer process.
Okay.
And it would have to be sponsored by someone that is willing to take that on and bring it forward, because it take on a whole life of its own. I know some people that contacted me that originally were interested in it thought that there are some samples going on with New York and a few things that are happening sooner than later, and it was kind of a wait and see feeling, which we could address in the future. Anything else from anyone on the committee? Any new business? Any old business? Our next meeting is August 11th via WebEx or at the City Hall meeting room, depending on where we fall. I ask that counselors reach out to me because I would like to see some first passes of some of the stuff that we are going to be bringing forward to full council and go from there. And just for one more mention to the public, we are not voting on anything immediately. So rest assured, at the August meeting, there might be a couple things, but we've got a long way to go, and we're going to do it right.
Councilor Quinn, just to clarify, is that a request for drafted language?
I think in some ways, or maybe I think drafted language is a good word, Councilor Gilmore. I think areas that need to be brought forward, because it's a large document. I know Councilor Forgy's working on some, so I don't want to be redundant, and I hope to get some of that there. But yes, starting the process of looking at pieces. If you had a piece that you want to bring forward, almost as then we need to talk about that, just so we're all on the same page.
And is this going to be subject to the 5-day rule, or is this something that we can operate? Can this operate as like a working document, like a living document, until we vote on it?
I will get clarification on that. I don't want to tell you yes and be wrong.
My only concern is if it's going to be subject to the 5-day rule, we've got to get it in. I think
sooner rather than later.
Is it tomorrow? I saw an email
today.
So it would have to already be in today if it's subject to the 5-day rule.
Yeah, and I believe in this. In this meeting, I don't think we're bringing anything forward for a vote this time, but we could have a discussion on pieces of this, in open discussion, and I'll find out.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. I just want to, we also, as I indicated earlier before, we did ask the attorney a couple of questions, and a lot of it, Sheila, was exactly what it was about timing. When do we have to have the referendum in? When do we have to talk about these? Is the 6 months from the time we accepted it, or is it from the time that the council voted on it? All those questions have been asked. We haven't got some comments on some of those, and I will have those shared to full council and especially this committee as those are answered.
Great, thank you.
So next meeting, August 11th, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded.
Motion made by Vice President Gilmore, seconded by Elmer. Meeting adjourned at 6:34 p.m. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Thanks for your assistance.
Have a great night.